Hey, dudes. Tonight, uh, the time changed, so I guess, tonight, we've got a special guest joining us, sci-fi author Eric Miller. We're going to talk about storytelling, the strange overlap between science fiction and the paranormal, and where some of these wild ideas came from. And knowing us, we might even throw Eric into one of our paranormal adventures, the AKA D&D style segment we have. That's if he wants to. Hopefully he does. Hopefully he plays D&D. I guess we'll find out. Let's get into it. What is up, dudes? Welcome to the Paranormal Dudes podcast, episode 91. We're here joined by a great author, actually. We were approached by him and his team about a couple months ago, right, Jess? And we love sci-fi, we love paranormal, we love everyththing spooky and everything in between, supernatural, right up our alley. And we're happy to have on the show Eric Miller. Everybody clap at Eric.
Yay.
Clap at him. Yeah. How's it going, Eric? How's your day going so far?
It's going really well. It got hotter than heck here in lovely sunny Southern California. I guess that's why they call it sunny Southern California. But every now and then, it's still, after many years of living here, it catches me off guard that it's like, what do you mean it's 90 in March or February, whatever this is? So, yeah, it's paradise, all right, until it's 90 in March. But I guess it's better than being in a snowbank.
Very true.
You know what? That is true. That is true. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this. I live in Vegas. It actually snows here. Believe it. No one. Yeah. It actually.
I came through. I did a mad one-day trip over to see something a couple years ago, and I'd completely forgotten. And I was pulling into town from LA, and I was like, "Oh, it's snowing!" Like, wow! And,
Oh my gosh!
yeah, and well, I guess I lose track of time here, like a lot of people. But a few years ago, I ran out to Death Valley, and it was spring, and I'm thinking I'd want to go out there and see it because before it gets super like mega hot, it's always hot out there. And I was at whatever Diablo Peak or whatever it is up above, looking down, and I started getting kind of biting cold, and I'm thinking, I'll just put on my cold gear and watch the stars, let it get dark. And then I realized I had taken all my cold gear out of my SUV for some stupid reason, and smartly started going back to LA, and I start getting through the pass, and it's snow flurries. And what I didn't realize, like an idiot, I didn't check, that was the year that Big Bear got buried under about 20 feet of snow. And I literally came down the pass into the LA basin as that was hitting Big Bear in the mountains behind me. And I go home, go to bed, get up the next day to apocalypse up in the mountains, and realize, I mean, talk about real horror and real paranormals. Like, I could have been that story of being, stuck in the snowbank and like, did I fill the tank up? How much heat do I have? How long can the motor run? And do I, digging for peanuts, peanut M&Ms under
in
the
your
seat?
Own shining. Yeah.
My own shining moment. Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I could probably stand to live 2 or 3 weeks in there as long as I could melt snow for water. It'd be a good diet plan. But
look, he's aside from being an author, he's resourcable as well. I love that.
If I ever get stuck in a blizzard, I hope it's with you.
If Jessie gets stuck, if that happens to Jessie, she's done. She's like,
I'll give up.
What do I do?
I'm done.
Give up. But yes, long way of saying, yes, it does snow in Vegas. It snows in the weirdest places.
It does. And I'm super happy that you're on our show. More so me. I mean, we're all into the paranormal and horror on our show for sure, but I am the sci-fi guy. I'm the nerd. I don't know if you could tell. I have Tron stuff here and all kinds of...
OG Tron. Yeah.
OG Tron. Exactly. OG Tron. Very much a product of the 80s and 90s. Everything. I even like, this is going to be like deep cut stuff. I even love, as cheesy as it is, I love the Guyver. I don't know if anybody knows what the Guyver is with Mark Hamill.
Yep.
I love MacGyver.
And, I'm getting a psychic impression that you might like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles somehow. I'm not
I don't know.
sure.
Maybe. It's
Maybe I
possible.
read
I
the
was
bio
like,
or
oh
something.
my God, he's psychic like me.
Yay, turtles.
Yeah, exactly. Yay, turtles. So you're here because, well, we love sci-fi and you're an author. And I have a slew of questions. People underestimate me because I'm kind of like the show's idiot. I say dumb jokes and go on weird tangents. And even if a moment is serious, I'll inject it with an inappropriate joke.
Yes.
Usually of the phallic shaped nature, as Jesse would probably outline it. Okay. I want to just jump into it real quick because I want to pick your brain. And if aliens landed tonight after this podcast or during it and asked you to recommend one sci-fi book to understand humanity, what book would you give them to read?
Wow. That's gotta actually makes my brain hurt thinking of that. One sci-fi book to help aliens understand. I thought you were gonna help me, like that I'd get a volunteer to help pick them out, the tastiest people, to point out which ones are the best to eat. And yeah, that too. Wow, that's a loaded question. There are so many, as you know, there's so many great sci-fi books, so many speculative fiction books. I would have to really go back through my memory. I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is things like some of my favorite books, like Snow Crash, and which is such a phenomenal book, and all the cyberpunk books, and then flashback to Isaac Asimov and all the greats, and Hinlan, and wow, you've really caught me off guard with a question there. I mean, you know what I'm going to say, and this is a seemingly obscure but not obscure book, and that everyone should read it if they haven't. I'm going to say Waystation by Clifford Simak.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the book at all?
I am not, but I will jot that down.
It's been in the running to be made into a movie or a TV show, I think, since it was written. And I want to say 60s, maybe 70s, and I believe it won awards. And it's kind of, again, I don't want to say underground, but it's not one of the, the best known books out there. But it's a very simple tale. And the reason I'd recommend this to aliens is it's about a guy who lives in the hills in a cabin, very much a kind of an Appalachian hill guy, simple person. And his cabin is actually a wormhole way station for aliens to come from different places in the galaxy, stop over and recharge, and go to catch the next link out. And so he's a very simple, very humble person from a very simple, very humble place who is suddenly being visited by aliens of all different types and stripes and shapes and colors and everything. And eventually there's a plot about the government figures out there's something going on at the cabin. If I'm remembering correctly, either through machinations or just exposure, he's a couple hundred years old or something, that he's been doing this forever. I'm forgetting that exact plot point. But eventually the government figures it out. And of course, people want to come up here and say, hey, what's going on? And maybe take control. And it's all about this just very basic human guy being exposed to things that his brain can barely comprehend, and seeing the wonders and making friends of all different types. And I think it shows the best of humanity. It really does. And the worst of humanity at the same time. So I think, and if you haven't read the book, go read it. And I do hope that somebody finally makes it into a really good TV show or a really good movie, because it's so rich. But even just the book itself just stands testament. Very good.
Interesting.
By itself.
It kind of, honestly, as you were describing everything, it also has elements of an outcast, how an outcast would grow up, say in high school or whatever, and you're just trying to figure things out. When you were explaining it, I was kind of relating it to it in that way, because I definitely, I like a bunch of nerds. I'm an outcast. I was an outcast. For the most part.
Yeah, I was too. Same way, a bunch of us. And now there's a moment where the nerds and the outcasts have been accepted and not judged and have power in media, and that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So I had that question for you. I promise the other ones won't be as grueling as that one, or as I want to say brain tickling a little bit.
Damn it! You made me think. What the hell?
I know it was like I have to hit them hard. I have to make it.
Yeah,
You know, I have to.
that was a tough first question, Sergio.
I know.
Yeah,
Right? Well, I
that's a
had
tough one.
to.
And there
Let's warm
are
up a little
so
bit.
many. There's so many more books out there that I could just rave about for
For sure.
hours. Like I'm a big Peter F. Hamilton fan. If you've read the Dreaming Boyd trilogy, which still just blows me away, I've reread those so many times.
Nice.
And there's just again so many from Henlon to Zelazny to up through Ray
Mhm.
Bradbury. There's just so many terrific works. It would really be hard to pick one, but and you know what? It's another one that's regarded as being one of the greatest books ever. Is Canticle for Leibowitz, which it's one of the most famous books ever written, science fiction books, and it comes in and out of vogue. And it's basically 3 or 4 vignettes. The simplest part of it is that there is a monastery. We are post-nuclear Holocaust, hundreds, thousands of years later, and there is a monastery devoted to preserving the last bits of civilization. And the holy scripture, the holy writ that they have is this writing from St. Leibowitz. And what it really is, it's a shopping list. It's a grocery list. But it's the only thing. It's the only thing they have left, and an entire religion and world is devoted. And there's, like I said, there's 3 or 4 chapters, and basically, not spoiler alert, but it also goes into the different chapters take place hundreds or thousands of years apart, and it just shows that the same cycles repeat themselves over and over and over again. And which also reminds me of another. I'll just keep going on forever. The Postman, another terrific book. Love The Postman. Not the movie, kind of missed the mark, I think, a little bit, but The Postman, it's all about how these cycles of things that we go through. George Powhatan, that amazing character who's a bioengineered super soldier, and it's like, please come save us after the latest warlord has come through in this post-apocalyptic world. And his answer is, why? I've saved people before, I'll save them again, and it just keeps repeating itself. People keep making the same dumb mistakes, and why should I risk my life and come off the mountain to help you again? And it's such a rich book. There's so much going on in there. David Brin, just another terrific writer. That's just another book that I could almost recommend, because it gets into the humanity and the struggle and how people really, I think, at the base, we want to help each other and do good, and we're full of this wonder and curiosity. And I think I would want the aliens to know that we don't just taste good, that we're actually we have good taste too. So something like that.
I love that.
We're not just available for probing, I promise.
Yeah, exactly.
There's other uses for us.
There's other uses, I promise.
I brought the wrong mug. I actually have an Enjoy the Probing mug, and I have my Poe mug, so I got the wrong one today. So
perfect. When you said The Postman, I was like, is he talking about Kevin Costner, The Postman? And you were.
That's what it's from. It's based on the book. And again, the movie, it's got its high points, and there's some beautiful stuff in it, but they kind of missed the point. And if you know the story, it's basically a series of things destroy the world. It's not one big cataclysm, one big nuclear war, but it's nuclear war here, climate collapse there, disease vectors here, and eventually all society collapses. And the hero is basically trying to survive, and he's freezing. And there's all these, warlords and cannibals and whatever you go through, and just finding food in the Pacific Northwest. And he's running, I believe, if I remember correctly, he's running from animals or whatever on a freezing night, and he stumbles into an old wrecked postal vehicle, and he gets inside, and he basically puts on the clothes of the long dead postman, and he like, a satchel. It's full of mail and letters, but he's like, this will be good to carry things that I find, and so he eventually goes out. People see him, and they think that civilization has come back, that the postal service is there, that the government is there. And of course, thinking on his feet, he's like, this is a meal, this is food. People are not trying to shoot me. And he actually ends up delivering letters that have been waiting for decades. And he starts fulfilling the prophecy of wearing the uniform. And and there's so much going on in that book. But
I got to read the book. I've seen the movie, but I got to read the book.
Now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those that just they a really good attempt, and I need to rewatch the movie. It might be better than I thought, but it's such a titanic book that it would be really hard to actually create that in a movie. So no fault for trying whatsoever. But great book, definitely put it on your list.
I will. And okay, here comes another question, and I promise it's not crazy. Okay, just straight up, was there any event in your life? Could be anything at all that you experienced, or maybe you saw a movie or whatever it is that led you down this path of sci-fi that you knew you wanted to be a part of and you didn't know what it was yet, whether it was, writing a story or, a script to a movie or anything of that sort?
Yeah, there were many, and it's hard to remember the exact one, but I think some seminal moments was probably watching late night TV as a kid and probably discovering it may have been Pit and the Pendulum, but definitely the old science fiction movies that I remember, some of which are still my favorite. The Fly, Them, which is
Mm.
just still such a phenomenal movies. What I have to say though, I'm going to zero in on it is my dad used to talk about a great movie, and he talked about it on a different level. But he talked about Day of the Triffids when he was a kid. He saw the movie, and I didn't realize at that point, and I don't think that he knew that it was based on a book by John Wyndham. And another
Mm.
case where the book it goes in such a deeper direction than the movie could, because it's kind of a 50s science fiction movie about killer plants that have come down and seed the world and are shining, shining laser lights on us, reflecting the sun and blinding us. There's a whole lot going on in it. But my dad telling me about that movie, I think really affected me, and I really made me want to seek out and find those. So it's like,
Interesting.
oh, let's go back and watch these old cool 50s movies. So I think some people may not have had that, but there was a weird connection. And then years later, when I found the book, and the book is so amazing and deep, and he and I eventually talked about it a bit, but he was still just like, wow, that was the coolest movie ever that I saw when I was a kid. So, or he wasn't a kid, he was a young man at that point. But having that
Mhm.
family connection to that, I think there's a bunch of movies later on. RoboCop, when I was in college, watched RoboCop and went, wow, I'm going to Hollywood. That's also kind of a seminal movie for me because it made me realize that people were making things like I wanted to make, and that I could like, hey, I'm gonna go try this. I'm gonna leave Indiana and go to Hollywood and try to make movies like RoboCop. And I don't know if I actually succeeded in that yet or not, um, but yeah, I'll go back to Day of the Triffids with that. There's so many more, again, like I said, from The Haunting to The Fly, both versions of The
Mhm.
Fly, and so many great films that have impacted me at different points in my life. But I'll give a shout out to Dad on that for just because it was the
Awesome.
sheer joy that he had in watching a great old 50s sci-fi horror movie, and then I could share the joy later on, and that's just kind of damn cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And a nice father-son story as well. You don't get a lot of those, and it's actually refreshing to hear something like that, to be honest with you. And piggybacking off of that question, has anything ever supernatural or, you know, alien-like UAPs, UFOs, has anything cryptids or horror or even paranormal or ghosts, has anything ever happened to you? And you can full-heartedly say, "This actually happened to me."
So, yes, and multiple times. And I always like to say I'm a skeptic. I want to believe, just like our friend Mulder, I want to believe. I think that we haven't even begun to scratch the edges or the
Agree.
surface of understanding the universe and physics and science. And I'm a big science guy, and I'm a big Occam's razor person. And like I said, a skeptic, but a skeptic not looking to debunk something, a skeptic following the extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. But having said that, I've experienced things, and I don't expect anyone to believe that they happened to me. I don't expect to accept that I don't know what happened. It could have been some version of mental illness. It could just be poor memory. It could have been, I don't know, somebody slipped something in my drink. I don't know the answers. And people who do claim to know the answers and anything, be it UFOs or horror or paranormal or even religion to a certain extent, people who claim to know what's going on, I get really skeptical at that. But I also accept and I do not judge that it's all subjective because I experienced something, you experienced something, they experienced something. And whether or not it was really real, whether or not it was a figment of the imagination, or if it was the paranormal, supernormal, whatever it was, it happened to that person. And that to me is the most important thing. And I have to believe them. So I will, until incontrovertible proof the other direction, but I will at least accept their point of view on it. And I hope that, we all find out that if like, oh, that was actually, this or the Phoenix lights, whatever it was. Oh, that really was helicopters. Okay. I was wrong. I thought it was a UFO. But anyway, long winded introduction to that. Yes, I flat out pretty convinced that I saw what I would call a UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call it, on a Halloween joyride in southern Indiana, and I think probably somewhere 82 or 83 with a bunch of high school friends. Kind of low buzz over us, low pass, and I was trying to get friends to look up at it, and I think one or two of them remember me going, "Hey, look up, dummy!" But I watched this thing float over, and I know all about airplanes. I'm a big airplane junkie. I'm a history junkie, both old
wow,
planes, new
okay.
planes, dirigibles, you name it. The thing that I saw going over this hayride was nothing that I could explain. And I only have a
Okay.
vague memory of it, but it did, it looked like a lot of the classic things. But at the same time, did I maybe have a beer or two that night? Probably. It was cold.
Yeah.
What was it? Could it have been a helicopter? Could I just be remembering it all because I've got this remembering it wrong because I have this imagination that makes leaps and bounds? Probably. And at the same time, I've had others. I've talked about a few others where there was a house that we lived in growing up. I had a few weird experiences and saw some things in. And years later, after we had moved from this house, at dinner, my mom and dad, I'm not sure about my brother, but mom and dad, somebody mentioned something about the house. And everybody kind of looked at each other and went, oh, something happened to you there too. So at the very least, I could ask my brother about this, but my mom had the sleep paralysis things like the person standing next to her bed. And
Yep.
she very, very hardcore. She believed there was somebody standing at the edge of the bed and being wide awake and not able to move and terrified and trying to grab dad's hand. She told that story very clearly to me a few times. Dad in this same house, he said that he had a kind of poltergeisty kind of encounters.
Interesting.
That, like he said, you'd be reading the paper or watching TV, you'd set the paper down, and he'd get up hours later, and the paper's gone. Or same thing, he said he'd take off his shoes and they're down there and nobody's in the room with him. He's watching a football game or whatever. And he gets up to clean up the room to go to bed or go somewhere else. And his shoes are on the other end of the room or gone. So he had a lot of things like that happen to him. And I heard some things, I saw some things, and I do remember, again, I was young. There was kind of a weird setup, but my brother and I stayed in the basement of this house. And at this time, we stayed in the basement. Eventually, we moved upstairs for some reason. Why would two kids want to move upstairs where mom and dad is? When we had the run of this kind of basement, something must have happened. But I remember very clearly, and I have the image in my head of I was jumping out of the little shower that we had in kind of the utility room, laundry room, and looking through the door and to set the stage. It was kind of the bedroom was the main room, and there was a door that went out to the carport garage area to the right. And I remember seeing a pair of feet from the knees down walk through the door right in front of me, past me, and disappear down towards the bed. And I remember standing there like freaked the hell out. What did I just see? And it was like, where's the, like a special effect? Where's the rest of the person? I just saw from the legs down. Now, again, I've told that story to my brother before, and he remembers playing a lot of practical jokes on me. And there's just the chance that he was playing some kind of a joke and that I'm remembering it completely different, but I still have that image of seeing that. And did I see a ghost walk through there? I don't know.
You'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know. And I've actually driven past that house many times, and I'm not going to go knock on the door. I have some great old pictures of the house when we lived there in the early 70s, and I'm going to mail them some of the pictures and just do a nice introductory. But I'm never going to say where the house is or what the address is because I don't want anybody going over there and bother them based on something silly that I said. And also it's probably nothing. It's probably just a weird memory, and mom's stuff could have came out of some sort of just hallucination. Like sleep paralysis is a very well-known, documented allegedly of types of depression and some sorts of mental illness in some places. So it's not necessarily supernatural, even though it could be. Dad could have just been, forgetful. But I will say one thing about that house I always like to bring up, and this is also back to the skeptical side. Dad had talked about the woman that we rented the house from. She said that her husband had in the house and that she had sat by the fireplace in the basement and talked to her husband. And Dad was kind of like, oh, so, just reliving, talking to the memories. And he said, she went, no, he talked back.
Wow.
And like, oh, now again, could Dad have been making that story up to tell me he was a storyteller like I'm a storyteller? That she could have thought that could have happened? She could have told him, you're in a game of post office here, but then I hear that. I remember him telling us that years after we had moved out, so I don't think that predisposed me as a kid to think that this place was haunted because there was nothing like that. But there was definitely something, 3 different people saw and heard at that. Again, maybe my brother, but I don't think he actually had any experiences there. But again, both the parents are passed. They can't attest to either of those. You're just hearing me say it, and they told me. So, here we are. But do I still get a little tingles at the back of my neck thinking about it? Yeah, I do. And maybe someday I'll figure out what the heck that was. But until then.
Well,
But there's been
I'm glad you're
And
a
I think
skeptic.
we can
Yeah.
relate to that too, because we both, Sergio and I, grew up, in this very small town, rural
Very
area of
small
Imperial
town.
County, in Calexico, California, and we both lived in haunted houses. So and we've actually talked about that. Like, what if we go back, to the people that are there and ask them if they've had similar experiences? But it was crazy. Me, naturally, I'm a little bit clairvoyant, as well as my sister, my mom, my grandma. So we've kind of experienced things differently with that. Sergio, along with some of our other friends, have experienced weird things in the house where he used to live. So I know that, you know,
Together.
yes,
All at
and also
once. Yeah.
All at
together,
once.
or we live not that far from each other, and we saw similar things, UFOs, things like that in the sky. But at what point did you feel like, you know what, I can start actually writing this down to create a book, or to, start sharing with the world, like, these types of things that you were experiencing, or what kind of, I guess, inspired you to just start writing books?
Yeah, you know what? I started with short stories like most people do, and little, good or bad poems, mostly bad, emulating other writers that I had read. And I always like to say I encountered, thanks to the movie The Haunting, I encountered Shirley Jackson at a very young age,
Mm.
Robert E. Howard, the Conan stories, and a lot of the other people that I've read. And Poe was a huge influence. I mean, you can't help but see Vincent Price or whoever in, Pit and Pendulum, or these great, amazing Hammer films and AIP old movies based upon the old classics, and go, what the heck is this? This is a book too, and start digging into the old stories, and that leads you to Lovecraft and this winding road of back to some of the older ones, from Ambrose Bierce, wrote the Devil's Dictionary, among other things, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. So there's all these supernatural stories floating around, and eventually, I don't know what the tick was where I decided, hey, I want to be a writer, but I just started writing. As soon as I remember the moment when I could start reading, and it was road signs. Suddenly, just all the blur of random things when I was a small kid in the car clicked, and I could read, and that was very exciting. And I've never stopped just voraciously reading. So all of the different influences were imprinting in me, and like many writers, artists, comic book artists, everybody, we start copying and emulating the people that we love, and sometimes, and then eventually we develop our own style. Sometimes it's just terrible, and we should quit and try something else. That's where my comic artist career came to a very smart end early on, when I realized that I'm
Mine
never
too.
going to be able to. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm no Jack Kane Kirby, and I mean, he is, but I don't even have a ghost of a chance of being like him. But I could write, and so eventually you develop your own style, pieced together from other people. So I think, as it says on my bio, I found it recently, and I do need to post it. I thought it was earlier, but it turns out I think it was sixth grade, where I wrote a creative writing assignment, and I wrote a little short story. It's about not even a page long, about a sentient executioner's block that's soaking up the blood from the executions. And if you listen real quietly after the head falls, you hear chuckling coming from the block, and ooh, which is, spooky. That was the first knowingly horror thing that I wrote. And of course, it's got red marks all over it. And I look back now, sixth grade, I should have been a lot better writer than that. But apparently
But
I wasn't.
if you really think of the psychology of it, you're in sixth grade, you would think, oh, let's go play some tetherball, or you're in there writing this like this crazy story.
Yeah, I was the weird kid. And that was the one I say that got me the parent-teacher conference, or called to the principal's office.
Nice.
And probably kind of smart. I mean, I laugh about it now, but what's Eric writing here? And that's, again, this was in a time when definitely it wasn't the geek time that we have now, where everybody's watching stuff. And, probably by kindergarten, kids have already seen Saw and Cabin in the Woods, and who knows what they've seen. Back then, it was a little bit more of a conservative time. So somebody was like, maybe we should be talking to him, but everything was fine. It was all just fantasy fiction. So,
but you know what? I can relate. I remember almost everything that we grew up with in terms of nerddom or geeks. Usually, parents would deem it as satanic. It didn't matter what it was. I'm just like, this story's about bunnies. What do you mean it's satanic?
Yeah. Well, and I lived through the Satanic Panic and coming up and all that, when, playing records backwards. And it's like, I'm sorry, I've been listening to heavy metal my whole life, and I'm not
Same here. Yeah.
Not only do I actually listen to the lyrics, yes, some of the graphology or the graphics are cool as hell and all that, but most of the songs are actually against the devil and against suicide and all these things. And it was an easy thing. You get into control, decades or centuries of control, either from religion or from the whatever, the government or whoever. They get afraid of people that go in these weird creative directions. And sometimes there's a justifiable fear, but realistically, did Twisted Sister, did anybody really want to go basically, become devil worshippers because of Twisted Sister? No, pardon my French. We wanted to go out and rock and drink a beer and listen to heavy metal. Like, no, people.
Yep.
Yes, and I'm sure somebody took that to an extreme. But having come through that, and then you see just the layers of censorship. It's kind of scary. And books, and we've gone through that in recent memory, where Fahrenheit 451 was no longer an allegorical tale or metaphorical tale. It was suddenly happening over the last few years. And it's like, okay, guys, that's scary. Don't be afraid of knowledge. Don't be afraid of education. Let your kids, let your people understand things and experience things, and they're going to be better prepared to deal with things as they come up. And as you know, it's like, I mean, the greatest lesson from the oldest book, or one of the oldest books we have, is the tree of the fruit of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. And what did you do? You told them not to eat it. You told them not to read it. And of course, what do people do? As soon as you tell somebody not to do it, they want to do it even more. So you just
described both Jesse and I.
I know, right?
What is it on The Simpsons? Chief Wiggum is like, do not get into my locked box of mystery, or whatever he calls it. And of course, of course the kids want to get in there. And that goes back, Pandora's box, on and on and on. Exactly. It's just like, as soon as you make it, you're actually doing people a favor by burning their book or banning their book or saying don't read it, because that makes people like us go, ooh, what was in that? I want to read that even more. So
of course,
please, somebody ban my book, I guess. I need the publicity. I don't know.
So what made you
don't ban my book.
Don't ban his book. Yes. Don't.
So what made you first start getting into researching on Uncle Ed and all that crazy stuff that I have now kind of read about him? What kind of inspired that?
You know what? It was such an amalgamism. Is that a word? Am I getting my words right?
Sure. On Paranormal Dudes, it's a word.
Everything
we make up words here all the time. Yeah,
amalgamated. That character comes from a bunch of people I knew. The mental image was an old boss that I had, but it was nothing like that, of course. And and just people that I've known, and villains, people that I've read in fiction, but also a good dose of my own imagination. And so that's kind of where it came from. Same thing with the main character, Max. He's a combination of people, no any one particular one, but obviously his basketball skills come from people growing up that I know, like high school phenomenons who didn't necessarily, for whatever reason, make it to the next level. But
you could say peaked. You could say they peaked at high school.
Yeah, well, they peaked, or as in this case, or also the unrealistic expectations that get put on people at a young age. There was one, because the story takes place in Indiana. I don't specifically say it's Indiana, but hey, it's Indiana. We're all there. The clues are all there. It's a generic small town in Indiana, but there was a very famous high school basketball star that was courted by everyone from the time he was in junior high, and the next phenomenon, and the skills were there. And maybe the skills did not exactly translate to the pros. Eventually he did go to the pros, but there was so much pressure, and I can't even imagine the pressure. I mean, he's just a kid. He wants to play a game, and I'm sure he's got, that's why the book also goes into this sports obsession, and it's really translates to any kind of obsession, writing a book, doing your job, doing art, playing music, the people that will just sacrifice everything to accomplish a goal. And there's something amazing and wonderful about that, and there's also something sick about it too. And when it's us and whatever part of our life, you have to, hopefully you'll have a friend or a teacher or somebody, a partner say, hey, wait a minute here, you need to take a breath here. You need to, whoa, what are you really doing here? And I do that in the novel with the characters. But again, that's, to answer your question, going a lot of different directions, but it's all about just little bits and pieces of people that I've known, places that I've gone, and little tiny bits of me in there. I mean, I can't dunk a basketball like Max does in the book, and I don't grow demon horns or anything. Spoiler alert, like Uncle Ed does at some point, but there's definitely little pieces of every writer and every character that they write, both good and bad.
Okay. I mean, it's a very interesting topic as far as when it comes to a lot of your work, and it's I'm really trying really hard to contain myself because you're
Oh, gosh, please, gosh.
Yeah. Like, so this is and this is just me being transparent with you. You're our second author that's been on the show. First was JD Barker. He was it was more thriller horror, and I like that genre very much, but this is like it's like tickling some strings on the inside. And it's just I
Yes.
love that you're here on the show. And ultimately, when it came to a lot of your stories, did you so was it when you had to dive into a lot of your research, did it have to do more on a personal scale, or did you go into a library and just sit there and go through maybe past works or anything that happened in real life to give you inspiration? Overall, it's a long-winded question of asking what was your inspiration overall.
And my answer is research. People do. Yeah, I did a lot of research. I did. No, there actually is, and a lot of it's internal though. It's mental. It's like I said before. It's the pulling from little bits and pieces of people you've known before. Or this guy looks this way,
Right.
moves that way, acts this way, has these speech patterns, or it could be someone that you've known or that I've known, or it's someone else, a character in somebody else's novel or in a movie. So it's a weird conglomeration of things. But at a certain point, the characters, and this is the best part, and as some of my writer friends will tell me, it's also the scariest, worst part, is when the characters finally take a life of their own and they start. You're hearing the dialogue, you're trying to direct what they say, but suddenly it takes its own direction. And you're writing it, and you wrote it, and there's still sections in this book and other stories that I've read or that I've written that I'm like, did I actually write that? Like, it wasn't like I went into a trance or anything, and it obviously all
Right.
came out of me. But there's a point where the story takes over, and my friend Steven says that one time he's working on a novel, and he's like, they just won't do what I want them to do. And I'm like, well, you're the writer, you can kind of make them do. He's like, but that's also your subconscious mind telling you to maybe take this in a different direction, try something different. Is the story that I have, is the storyline the right one? Luckily, mine haven't taken off and galloped away with the story too bad, but they do go on tangents sometimes, and you kind of follow that writing tangent. And I always like to bring up in Uncle Ed, there's one of my favorite sections. There's a very, very dark section, and other people have laughed at the scene, which kind of baffles me, honestly. But to me, it's literally the darkest. All the magic is gone, all the supernatural, everything is gone, and it's a very real climactic moment between the hero Max and his dad. And it's dark to me. It's a dark scene. And I found myself, it wasn't that I couldn't handle the scene. I definitely wrote it, and I meant it to be exactly what it is, but I had to take a break on the page, and I pulled back, and I basically brought literally on the page God and the devil watching the scene play out as if they're a Greek chorus or as if they're a reader proxy, a viewer proxy. They're watching the scene play out and kind of looking at each other going, wow, people are just screwed up. Like humans are screwed up. And I didn't consciously set to write that. That came out of nowhere as I was writing this scene. And I think it was a little bit of me trying to have to just take a buffer between what I see as one of the darkest scenes in the entire novel. And it's the dark point of this character where his life at the end of the worst day of his life on so many different levels, so many things happen on this day. And this is the accumulation of it. And I just had to take that break. And it's some little fun writing. And I played fun with the language and everything. And so I'm very proud of the paragraph that I wrote about it, and it puts my weird little spin on this scene. But again, I didn't set out to consciously do that. I was just going to tell the scene the way it was, and those characters, God and the devil characters, just appeared and kind of took a little life of their own. And I went, oh wow, that's great. And to me, when I read that, it's like I've never read it before. Every time I'm just like, kind of, wow, that's startling. I wrote that, and proud of it at the same time to be the conduit to that creativity, wherever that came from, through my subconscious.
Maybe something supernatural came
supernatural.
through you and wrote it down.
It's I don't know if you can see the angel and the devil on the shoulder telling me to burn them all, Ralphie, burn them all, or put it out, Ralphie, put them out.
Put it out. Yeah.
Whatever it is, you don't see them, right? So
I
Jesse,
do a
you
little
see
bit.
him?
I do a little
yeah,
bit. Yeah.
See, I always
So
forget
You have to be
which one is
careful
on.
with Jesse. You have to be careful with
Whichever
Jesse.
is which
She
shoulder.
reads.
So.
Yeah.
it's on
But
that
yeah, and
side.
that, you know what, that gets into a big question that, you know, Stephen King obviously explored and so many others, but through the whole Dark Tower series and all those things and so many other writers, but also paranormal researchers is are we a conduit? Are we create when we write, when we do art, when we do music? Are we creating something out of whole cloth from all of these references and in our subconscious, or are we
Mhm.
breaking somehow the bonds to another dimension and we're channeling something, or we're kind of seeing it and not knowing we're seeing it and just kind of relating what we've seen, or in some cases, are we being possessed? There's the great example of, and I'm totally forgetting the classical composer, but he made the Devil's Concerto. And he
Mm.
claimed that the devil came and told him the notes, like literally.
Interesting.
So again, is that real? Was that a manifestation? Was that something supernatural, or was that just his way of? I don't even know his way of what of saying his way of saying this is what creativity is. But
Yeah.
that's a big open question. Again, we'll never know the answer to that.
And so now
Uh,
that that's kind of over and done with, which character surprised you the most?
which character surprised me the most?
That you were like, "Oh, I wrote this or I kind of created this character." Which one kind of surprised you the most?
I would say in this novel, I got my hero, my literal hero, and my figurative hero is Max, the main character, because he goes through so much. I put him through so much, and as I'm saying in it, I put him through the most hilariously horrifying, imaginative torture scene ever. It's all in a magical context, but when you read it,
Oh my
I go in so many
God.
directions, and I just threw everything in the kitchen sink in there that you could ever imagine. I don't know how you could ever film that if it was a movie, but it's also hilarious, like I say, hilarious and horrifying at the same time. But all of the things that he goes through is that he turns out to be, I think it's the part of me that's in there, is this really just a humble person. And that
Mhm.
he's doing what he can to help people that he thinks need his help. I mean, he's inherited this curse. He's inherited this weird mansion. His uncle has left this strange magical game, and he's got to fight demons to free souls that are trapped by his uncle. And he's willing to sacrifice everything to save people that he's never even met. But it's a duty
Wow.
to him, and that since that's kind of the way I was brought up. It's a very, I don't know if it's just a Midwestern thing, but it's a family duty. We hear that so many times in
Mhm.
things, but it's, you know, duty to your job, to your team if you're in sports or
Right.
whatever it is. But that again, back to the obsession to just accomplish this goal and to help other people, and of course he does it to the detriment of himself. It leads to, you
Mhm.
know, the terrifying torture, the horrible things, and the turning point of the book is what I've had to realize in my own life is it's a team sport. You can't get through
Mhm.
life alone. We all need friends. Everyone needs to reach out to someone else. And we all think that we're a rock and we're not. I mean, even rocks get eroded. Come on, let's, you know, you got to reach out and you got to, you know, the Appalachians used to be, you know, 20,000 feet high and they're not anymore. It may take a little bit of time, but all of us wear down and break down. And you got to have those friends or family or someone you can reach out to. And, or
For
if we're
sure.
lucky, the ones as in this book, and then some people have done it in my own life, have just said, "Hey, dumbass, you're on a bad path here. Wake up." Those are the true friends.
Mhm.
That's the true people that are willing to risk your friendship and your anger to say, "Wake the hell up." So, tried to
Right.
channel that in the book and the character, and that's why he surprised me by staying humble, even though he has some great arrogant, fun moments in the book. You
Sure.
know, again, favorite moments of. I think I always think of terms of cinema and movies, but when one of the characters says, "Oh, you do this and you do that," you know, why do you do this? And his answer is, "Somebody's got to be the hero." Just kind of arrogant, but at the same time, like I'm uniquely positioned and I've got the skills, and somebody's got to be the hero. And
No,
so I love
you're
those little
right.
borderline arrogant moments too. But at the end of the day, it's a very humble character that's doing what we all do. Again, all relative. Some struggles are shooting demons in the face in your magical basement, and others are just dealing with a bad coworker. Don't shoot the coworker in the face or
Yeah,
anything like
don't
that.
don't
So
shoot them. Don't
no,
don't
no,
do
no, 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 no. Save that for the
that.
demons.
Wait,
Save that for the demons. But
exactly.
every
Save it for
struggle
the
is
demons.
relative. Every struggle
Mhm.
is relative, and I
You
think
know,
people
and
need to
I
realize
think
that.
you're right. You know, as far as the struggle goes, and a big portion of it too is being an introvert myself. The moments of therapy throughout my week is when we have time on the show, and you know, when we're filming, or if it's before the show or after, not we're just chalking it up together. And especially with the whole background of being the outcast and thinking differently. And we grew up in a really small town. So you can only imagine in this small town, it was like football was the hierarchy. And that's just how it was. And if you did anything outside of that, if you were a metalhead or if you were into comics or if you were anything outside of the norm, you were the leper. And luckily it's not that way anymore. I'm really jealous of Gen Z and Alpha or whatever the they're called.
Gen whatever the hell. But you know what?
Yes.
That does still exist. And I believe me, I know the small towns where, you know, where a stoplight is a big deal and, you know, oh, we got a McDonald's. And now, you know, I live in a metropolis of, you know, millions of people now, but I'm in a little small section of it. And I always like to think it's my small town that I just ignore the fact that there's 4 or 5, 20 million other people right around me here in Los Angeles. But I'm very much that small town kid and that geek. And like I say, you know, I had long hair before it was cool. I was reading comic books before it was cool, and you find your people, and I think that's a thing in life too. And you know, anyone listening to this, reaching out, the more something I've been saying, I like to call it, instead of social media, it's anti-social media, because the more connected we've become, the more isolated we've become at the same time. And that's also kind of terrifying, that human interaction. And I suffer from it too. Is like, oh, do I really want to go out? Do I really want to see friends? Do I want to go? No, I don't want to go to a party. And then of course you have fun. You go to the party and you see people. But you know, that message to people that your people are out there. You're not alone. No matter what weird. That's the beauty of the internet and all these things and podcasts and the YouTubes and whatever the kids listen to these days. There's a little corner of the world out there for you. And there's people just like you. You're not unique. We're all unique in our own way, of course. But there's somebody out there that thinks like you do, that likes the same things that you do. So just make an attempt to find them, do it. And like you said, I became very self-contained when I was young, because I was, you know, moved around a lot and I was always into the comics and this and the other. It's hard enough when you go to the same school to find somebody else that's reading horror and science fiction and comics, let alone when I think one year we actually changed schools 3 times in 1 year or something, and trying to find a new story, new skill set of making new friends, making them fast, and realizing you may never see them again. And so it's a thing, and it still exists even with the social media. And my heart breaks for people that haven't quite found their people yet. And you know what? You also find out that sometimes the people that you think you can trust aren't that trustworthy, but that's no reason to dust yourself up and do it again. Most people are good people. And if you're just open and honest with them, get out there. I hope that's what people get out of my book or my writing or my life or my influence, is just get out, try something, you know, try your art. Don't run away from your art, from your books, your comics or whatever, because somebody else laughed at you, because that quarterback is going to be fat and have cirrhosis sooner or later. And, you know, and you're going to be directing $200 million movies in Hollywood, you know? So
exactly. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And anybody listening, and that's kind of like what we try to paint here on the show too, is that we welcome everybody. We may not agree with everybody, but that's okay too. And I'm glad you brought that up. And everybody that's listening, yes, you'll find your tribe out there. Your tribe is out there somewhere. If you don't have it yet, it's right under your nose. It'll happen. For sure, it'll happen. And
I might already be the king of your tribe, so that's
there
okay.
you go.
I welcome
Exactly.
I welcome new members.
Exactly.
We're nice.
He welcomes
to
all new readers to his book for sure. Okay, and honestly, since I've been holding, this is like in my back pocket. I'm going to pull it out now. So you mentioned comics a bunch. I would be lying if I said I haven't been collecting comics since I was 8 years old. I'm not going to say title. What character were you often looking for in a comic shop? What specific comic was your go-to and your, I want to say, let's say adolescence, but your coming of age.
Right. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I would say, weirdly opposite ends of the spectrum. So there's a beginning, middle, end. I was always a big Captain America fan, and it wasn't for the rah America. It's the Steve Rogers, that he's every man who was at the right place at the right time. And if the super soldier serum didn't matter, if he wouldn't have had the heart of a lion, he wouldn't have been Captain America. That's what made him Captain America, and that he was smart and a clinician. Again, losing my words tonight. Very clinical in his thinking and very strategic about things. So I always like that. And then the opposite extreme of that is I was a huge Thor fan, still am, because of the Norse mythology and what they all did to it, what all various writers and artists did to Thor, and even into Beta Ray Bill, which is some of the greatest, weirdest writing out there ever. But then somewhere in the middle, I think so many of us gravitate, and I'm glad that this has been one of the best represented in all comic book, is I gravitated to Wolverine. I mean, there's so many great X-Men in there, but Wolverine is just that guy. Again, yes, he's got the claws, and yes, he's got the unbreakable bones and the regenerating and all that. But at the heart of it, he is just that the best kind of warrior that will sacrifice himself to do the right thing. And at least in the comic version of the Infinity War is one of my favorite moments that didn't quite make it into the movies. I love the Infinity War. Yep. And I understand why, but there's the moment where, he's itching to go and all these, all the Titans are fighting with Thanos and the battle's happening and Captain America's running the battle. And we all know this, so spoiler alert, but holding Wolverine back. And it's just like, I want to go, I want to fight. And it basically, because you're the one at the right moment. You're the one who will kill him. You will not hesitate. It's like he's holding back his ultimate weapon is that ferocity of that character that he knows that, again, everybody else might have a moral complication of it or might hesitate for a millisecond, but Wolverine is going to be the one that's going to end the threat. And that's just two of my favorite characters at the exact same moment. And I think we all know how that turned out in the book, but in the comics, but those were kind of my three favorites, and there's so many more. I mean, you just can't.
And it's the same today, though, from your adolescence into now. Those are still the same.
I haven't read comics as much recently as I did when I was younger, and I think I was in the golden age or the silver age. I'm forgetting my ages now, and I'm in the gray age now. My hair's turning gray. But you know what? There's another one too that it was a DC team up, and I'm not sure. I know it was Marvel team up, and I cannot remember. But it's two characters that I was not necessarily into. I was I was more of a Marvel guy, and Jack Kirby and all this and all those wonderful creations. Jim Starlin, everything Jim Starlin did is just incredible. But there was for whatever reason I have it, and it's probably still in the closet somewhere. It was a team up with Green Lantern and Superman. Now, I get the characters. I love the movies. I understand and I get it. But they just weren't my vibe, even though they're big science fiction-y and all that. But in this team up, a particular one of all the machinations that are happening, and it's one of my favorite moments in any storytelling media, is that some weird alien has basically taken the ring from Hal Jordan. And so the alien is putting his mind into the ring, and he's become omnipotent essentially, and he's going to rampage through and stomp the whole thing. And so Hal Jordan gets a message out to, I'm probably messing up the story, but gets a message out to Superman. It's like, hey dude, this is what's happened. You need to go stop him. And so Superman's going to go fly out and do the battle. And you're expecting this big giant apocalyptic battle. And Hal Jordan's like, dude, man, he's so powerful. He's off the charts. You better watch it. And then suddenly there's this wonderful, and I forget who the artist is, forgive me, but one of the most beautiful artist piece of art ever is the little speck of Hal Jordan standing on this asteroid in this giant kablam that just covers the entire panel, like, a universe shattering explosion. And that panel or two later, Superman flies back and just chucks the ring to Hal Jordan, and Hal Jordan's like, what happened? And he says, they don't call me Superman for nothing. Like,
I love that.
Yes.
That is one of those just great moments in a comic, and it's two characters that I'm like, they're not. I get them, I read them, I enjoy them, but they're not my favorites.
Just not your vibe.
So, but just again, I need to look it up now, because whoever drew that and wrote that, like, wow, that was an out of the ballpark episode. And some of those team up comics were like, well, these are gimmicks, but sometimes they just worked great.
They are. Yeah. Sometimes they actually work. Back in the late 90s or early 2000s, it was Marvel versus DC. That crossover was crazy. I don't know if you had a chance to read any of that, but
I never did. Before getting
into super nerddom, and Jesse's just falling asleep over there.
I'm like, wake me up.
One last thing about comics, and it correlates a lot to what we do now. And I read it a lot, and I want to say later in my life, probably in my 20s and into my 30s, not so much now, now that, similar to you, I have a lot of things going on. So comic books have taken a back seat, unfortunately. I would suggest, if you have the time, to read Hellblazer, which is John Constantine. Phenomenal character.
Yeah.
It's a DC character, but it's awesome. Demons and all of that stuff within the paranormal and horror. They adapted it with Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves was Constantine or John Constantine in the actual comics called Hellblazer. So really, really good. That was one of my favorites. And it sounds very obscure. I think it goes into my whole nature of being a hermit or an introvert and not wanting to conform to the Spider-Man or conform to Superman. I have to find something super obscure within the obscure. At the time, it was like the obscure of the obscure. I don't want to be like everybody else in my small group. I'm going to be further than that. So I'm going to start reading Hellblazer or Phantom X from X-Men. It was just, I was like a hipster within the
that.
nerds,
Well, that's kind of that's the beauty of the comic genre itself, is that it can go in so many, like I mentioned, Jim Starlin, like that's big science fiction. And I did like Fantastic Four too. That's full bore science fiction, even though it's superhero, that the pantheon of the Eternals and, whether you like the movie or not, but that whole gigantic world of all that stuff, that's big brain stretching stuff. And Kirby did that well. Starlin did it well. Others did it well. But then there's also just flat out Daredevil, It's a guy in a suit. I mean, yes, he can echolocate. He can throw his stick and it bounces. Yeah, that's all fun. But it's a guy in a suit at the end of the day that's doing something. So he's kick-ass, kind of kick-ass without the.
I loved Kick-Ass. I love Kick-Ass.
Yes, I just rewatched it. It's so much fun. So
it's so good, so good.
But
Jesse's like, what the fuck is going on right now?
No, I understand. I'm just
me and Eric are going to become really good friends because of comics. And Jesse's like,
well, but then you know what? Echoing back though, I'm a giant Bernie Wrightson fan as an artist, and that Zelda Devon, who did my cover, we discovered a mutual love of Bernie Wrightson. So the cover is kind of a little Wrightson-esque in some ways with her amazing style on it. But eerie comics, so the supernatural comics and the vampire comics, I always liked those too because they went in that direction. There's ghost stories and honestly, I've still got these somewhere. I hope they're worth something. Maybe I can retire. But the Classics Illustrated, whoever the genius was behind that, if you're familiar with those comics, I think they're still making them or not, or if they were classic or not, but they literally made comic book versions of classic books. That was something I forgot that got me into reading classic literature. It's, Ivanhoe, Tale of Two Cities, all these things as a comic book. And it was like kind of brilliant and really well done and well illustrated. I don't know if they, sold very well, but it was somebody's attempt to, the kids these days like comics. Let's make them read some Dickens and sneak it in there, And, but, hey, it worked for me and introduced me to some amazing writers and literature. And I love that it's a different format and a different medium can tell a story in a beautiful way. It's not just a movie. It's not just a podcast. There's so many different ways to tell a story, and that's incredible.
Exactly.
So, and there's ghosts in comics too. So there you go. Ghost Rider. Come on, Ghost Rider. And then that led us to, was it Nick Cage? I mean, come on.
Yep. Exactly.
It's got to be the height of cinema, honestly.
For sure. Speaking of cinema. So I don't know how far you get down into the rabbit hole on all of this, but two of your books, Hell Comes to Hollywood. All right. A lot of crazy is coming out of Hollywood as of late. So I'm not saying that you predicted what's going on in Hollywood with all the ritualism and all that stuff, but did you have an insider? I'm just kidding. So Hell Comes to Hollywood, your book for sure. But did you have an inkling, or maybe there was like inspiration within there? Like there's always been rumblings of there's some weird going on in Hollywood, but we don't know what it is. And now it's kind of coming to light. Overall, I just want to get your own perspective on it. And if there's any correlation with Hell Comes to Hollywood with any of that stuff.
No, with the real world stuff, no, not at all. And I didn't. I mean, of course, you have an inkling because it's an industry that attracts personalities of every stripe, from blue collar
Right.
people like me that are the behind the scenes, and
Mhm.
to the wildly creative people, and some that flame out early, some that are madly creative in a great focused way, but also the egos and it's kind of that hypercosm that we see of microcosm, hypercosm. I invented another word of
There you go. Perfect.
of people
Coin
that
here on
come
Paranormal Dudes. Hypercosm.
right here,
Let's do it.
hypercosm. That's my new band name or my new novel.
Awesome.
But
Nice.
it's people that collect, and sometimes without checks and balances. There's the power and the influence of power and the money, and it's easy for people to get caught up in that. And no one tells you no, especially on the celebrity side, that that's the greatest performance ever, or you're brilliant, and nobody's telling them that it's actually terrible. But also the behavior. Some of the producers, some of the directors, some of the celebrities, no names, but we've seen a lot of the names that just have this reprehensible behavior, and there's literally no excuse for it. And a few crew members have some reprehensible behavior too. But
Right.
so having said that, I did not have an inkling. I wasn't really channeling that. It was more when I went out, I had the idea to write what you know, and I went out to the different writers, and it was mostly every story in here is coming from their experience, and we've all had positive, mostly positive, but a lot of very negative experiences. So all those writers are kind of venting their spleens a little bit on experiences we've had. And so again, did I, was I invited to weird parties and I saw things that I shouldn't see? No, I'm not in that circuit, and thank goodness I'm not. I'm kind of
I know.
I would have left early at some of those, believe me, and I definitely would have called the police. But no, all
sure.
credit is to the different writers in the anthology, because it's bits and pieces of things that they saw or imagined out of whole cloth, and really, really proud of that. But then, and you look forward, like there's some things that are like kind of like The Substance, like we were had ideas like that in there, and some of the just abusive personalities and ghosts and all that. But it's like I don't think any of it's really based upon other than just kind of events that we've all experienced, or jerks or evil people in the business. I don't think anybody in this had an inkling of some of the really truly horrifying things that have been uncovered, and the abusive behavior by people. And there's no place for that in any business, any industry, anywhere. And again, unfortunately, ours seems to attract people like that. And
Fortunately, it is true.
So
okay, and so you mentioned you're a skeptic. Okay, we've had numerous conversations with skeptics on the show, off the show, and comments and DMs refuting anything we speak on or what have you, which is great, because then you open up conversations, because then we don't want to have an echo chamber, especially on this show. We don't want that happening. One thing for sure, though, I will give you a little nugget of a show of an incident that just happened recently, and you could kind of decide if it's real or not. So I play D&D. I don't know if you play D&D, Eric, at all.
Used to, haven't in years. So, but
okay, I still play D&D, and my cousins were over, and we were playing D&D. It was like a campaign that lasted like 6 or 7 hours, in one shot. And then magically, I want to say magically, it was kind of like it happened. After that, then weird things started happening in my house. I couldn't sleep right, hearing noises, felt like someone was next to me, punched the air, nothing was there. A bunch of incidents just started happening consistently. Then we had a discussion about it on the podcast, and without Jessie knowing, Jessie had no idea about anything, even though she's my best friend and she didn't know of this. I was explaining it to him just like I am to you now, and out of nowhere, Jessie just goes, "Were you guys playing D&D?" I was like, "Yes." And she goes, "Were you playing on your grandmother's old table?" "Yes." Whoa. What the what the wait, what? How would she know? Okay, number one, how would she know that? There's many places to play D&D in my house. I don't have a designated area for it. This is the first time that I usually play D&D online, because everybody lives far away from each other.
Right.
This is the first time we had an in-person experience for D&D. She hit that and she goes, "Is there anything marked under the table?" I don't know if it's like disappearing ink or some. There's nothing under the table. But but something's correlated to either my cousins bringing something into the house, or we invoked something with D&D, because there's like weird language, and you know that there's weird language and different things that your incantations and all that stuff, maybe. But things started happening, and they're still happening now. As a matter of fact, before I jumped on the podcast, before we got into preparation, to have you on the show and speak to you, as I'm coming to my office, the door opens in front of me to get into my office. I was like, "Oh, thanks."
Thank
And
you.
I joke around too much, yes. And I was like, "Oh, thanks." How did you know? Did you know that we're
He's a
filming the
gentleman.
podcast at 6? Thank you so much.
My
Yeah,
hands are
exactly.
full, and you opened the door for me. Wow. Well,
Yes.
I mean, that's I don't scary is not the right
And
word, but
it's
interesting. And
interesting. And I just
like,
want to see it from like a skeptic's perspective. I always do.
yeah. Well, I mean, who knows? There's so many things. One thing that I like about the book, The Haunting, and the movie, but it goes more into it in the book, is the professor Montague in the book tries to dispel. He talks about the way that the house was built, that there's the weird
Right.
right angles, and that the doors don't ever shut, or they keep coming open, or they prop them open and they shut, and people think that's supernatural. And he finally explains that no, the guy Hugh Crane built this place weird, and so the angles are off, so the doors are weighted and they won't stay open. And that's a way of not necessarily, it's a way of explaining things. But and Occam's razor, which we all, or at least I shave
Yeah.
with a couple times a week. You haven't shaved with it in quite a while, but
It's been a while.
but like, what is the most logical? Did a puff of wind blow the door open? Was it the house
Right.
settling? What was this? Or the but from my version of skepticism, you want to go to those simple things that, like, okay, what basically happened? And the big one is, did you remember it correctly? There's a wonderful book, if you know who Oliver Sacks is. He was incredible. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat was based upon one of his books. He was a psychologist and an amazing writer, and wrote about different sections of the human brain and psychology and things. And I'm forgetting the name of the book, but he wrote one about memory, and how, of the many anecdotes in there, he talks about one in particular, that he has this distinct memory when he was a kid of surviving in London during the Blitz, when the Nazis were attacking, and all the horrors of being down in the shelters while the bombs were falling. And he's written about this. He remembers it crystal clear. And if I'm remembering correctly, his brother said at one point, Oliver, we went out to the country. We weren't in London during the Blitz. We evacuated. And he's like, no, I remember it. I have these crystal clear memories. That was one of a million anecdotes that he told about himself, something that he remembered specifically. But also, you
Kind of
talked
like a
about
Mandela effect, right?
yeah. No, it's the Bernstein Bears. I'm sorry. And Sinbad really was a movie. I'm sorry. I saw Sinbad. I know I saw Sinbad. So I'm sorry. You can affect all you want, but human memory is very fallible, even from moment to moment. And that's why it's kind of interesting to have podcasts, to have recordings, to have pictures. I take pictures of everything now. I jokingly call my phone my memory, because I can remember where I was at. But I've
Nice.
forgotten in a lifetime. You forget people, you forget places and things. You also remember things that may not have happened. And so it's nice to have a story. And sometimes that assaults, we get the cognitive dissonance. Some people freak out when it's like, no, that's actually not what happened. And so again, check out the Oliver Sacks book. I wish I could remember the title of it, but about memory. And any of his books are terrific. But even that, like, it just happened. Did you, from a skeptic standpoint, are you remembering this correctly? Is that what really happened? Is that what you thought happened? But you also, where I kind of go into an elevated skepticism, is, like I said earlier, I don't claim to know what's happening on a quantum level. I don't claim to know about physics. I don't know about metaphysics. I don't know about telekinesis. No one has ever proved it, but at the same time, nobody has disproved it. And there are so many things, from radio waves to cell phone waves to different types of waves to emanations that we put out, pheromones and scents and subconscious sounds. They have weapons based on sound, and they can play low frequencies that make you feel weird. And the human body can detect, I think it's down to 1/4 of a degree in temperature change. And that's one of the big things that they think is a ghost, because you walk through a cold spot, and it's really not a cold spot. It's just a draft in your house. But having said all that, there's ways to explain everything. But when you do the Occam's razor, what's the most logical explanation? Sometimes you just run out of logic. And it might be one of these things that we simply don't understand. We don't have the receptors for. We don't have the instrument either internally, or we're ignoring it. Maybe, everyone's had that moment. I think it's one of my favorite sections on Reddit is, people ask, is there ever a time when you met somebody where you just knew there was something wrong? And I love reading the stories, but that's people. We've all met that person, and
Yeah.
and there may not have been something, may not have been a serial killer or whatever, but every now and then you just meet somebody, and it's either the way they move, the way they look, the way they sound. There's something either aggressive or weird or different about them that suddenly just triggers the hackles. It goes back to those caveman type receptors that we
Instincts,
have in
yeah.
us. And sometimes that's just about people being different too, which is also horrifying and tragic, which leads to so many different things from racism and xenophobia and all these things that they're really not evil, they're just different. And that's the fine tuning of differentiating to knowing the difference between the two. But the point is, there's all these weird signals and things, and are we carrying something? Is there a spiritual ghost? Is there something imprinted in the walls of the house? I don't know the answer to that. Now, I want to apply science to it, and science, you absolutely have to have the incontrovertible proof. So if you want to tell me that a ghost pushed open the door, I'm not going to say you're a liar. I'm not going to not believe you, but I want to look at the door. I want to look at the house. I want to test. I want to have double blind conditions. I want to bring people in that have never been in your house before and see if the door opens for them. Did you step on that piece of wood, and did that cause weight to settle and cause 1 gram of weight in the door to swing it open? Or is Uncle Bob still looking for his lost baseball card that's hidden underneath the desk, and he's going to find it one way or the other? Poor old departed Uncle Bob, and he's going to find it. Damn it! So
He's determined.
Yeah, he's determined, and you better find it
it
before he finds you. So
I know. Okay, that's fair. I love that question. That answer. Usually it's I don't know. You had a lot of ammo when it came to analyzing what happened, and I love that, because some skeptics, they just don't have anything to add to it. It's just that didn't happen. Okay,
Right.
that didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I always like to bring up one of my favorite. Well, there's two actually. They're archaeological mysteries. One is I believe it's Mayan. I may have that wrong, but it's the carving from thousands of years ago or whenever of basically, when you look at it, it's a guy in a rocket sled with a helmet on, with his hands on controls, with rockets thrusting out the back. It's a very famous thing. I first saw it in Eric von Donigen's Chariots of the Gods years ago. And okay, somebody may have explained it, that it has religious iconography or whatever, that it means something. But at the end of the day, when I look at it, it's a guy in a rocket sled. Now, am I saying that guy, whoever carved that he see an astronaut in a rocket sled? I don't know if he did. Was it pure imagination? Did he just come up with this? But to look at that without any, evidence or any, evidence is the right word, or education about the culture and the things around it and other pieces of art, to just look at that and say, well, there's no way that could be an astronaut in a rocket sled because the astronauts weren't here thousands of years ago. Well, I'm sorry, that's a guy on a rocket sled. Now let's find out. Let's find out what it really is. Because there was a whole thing about, and I'm forgetting this, and art scholars will be hating me right now on the internet for saying this if they listen to this. But there was a whole thing about UFOs or objects in the sky in medieval paintings, and it turns out they're not UFOs. And people are saying, that they painted it in because they saw something in the sky. It turns out that's some sort of, I forget what it is, but it's a very known, not phenomenon, but it's a known artistic thing that people did, and it's kind of, I think it's tied into religion and Catholicism or something, or the whatever church, that it's something that you
whatever
have to
higher power it is,
a higher power or
sky.
something. There's an actual cultural artistic reason to have what looks like the UFO in the background of a picture of a castle. So again, at casual looking at it. But my favorite one is it's from, I believe, either Angkor Wat or whatever the next ruin or what a temple over from Angkor Wat is basically, there's all these amazing intricate carvings of different types of animals, and it's such amazing work. And I forget, how old it is, but there's one that looks like a stegosaurus. Now, I'm not saying that the person who carved that hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago saw a stegosaurus. I'm not saying that a stegosaurus is walking around. they could have found, a fossil of a stegosaurus, or they just imagined it. But I've seen so many skeptics look at that and go, that's not a stegosaurus. Well, no, it actually looks exactly like a stegosaurus. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that it's not. I want to, again, maybe they just made it up. I mean, cavemen draw things on walls, and it's not all phallic symbols. Sometimes they had imagination too. They were storytellers, and you go back to the cavemen sitting around the fire, and the thunder is the thunder god, and all this, trying to explain the natural world through ways of imagination, and we're still doing that in so many ways, even with all the science. But whoever that guy was that carved a stegosaurus, it's a stegosaurus.
I think
I'm
they
sorry,
even
you can look
seen
it up,
like
and
images of cell phones also that look like a cell phone and look like all
Oh
these,
yeah, I've seen those.
different
Yeah,
things. That's interesting.
But we're also getting into the world now where everything is so fakeable that you almost can't trust
Yes.
visual
Yes.
evidence anymore. And then when you combine that with what I said about the fallacy of memory, they even know that in like eyewitness testimony in court cases is most of the time fallible. Like, we just simply aren't programmed. It's years old now, but there's that wonderful I think it's guys playing basketball in a video, and you watch the video, and then after it's over, oh, what did you think of the monkey or the gorilla? Like, even I fell for it. Like, what gorilla? As they're shooting baskets, a guy in a gorilla suit walks through the shot, and you don't see it and you don't remember it. Like, like nine out of 10 people do not see. And if I'm correct, he even stops and waves and walks out of the frame. But you're busy watching the guys shooting baskets, and you're like, oh boy, human memory really is fallible. Like, wow. But at the same time, I would like to paraphrase, I mentioned earlier, Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, one of my favorite novels. And there's so much going on in that book. But one of the characters, the ex-girlfriend of the main character, hero, protagonist, her name is Juanita, and she's kind of disappeared, and they're back together and trying to save the world, essentially, in this amazing plot. But it involves in the origins of religion and language and computer programming and code, and how people are manipulating the deep structures of the brain, and all this amazing, wild, kind of almost post-apocalyptic Los Angeles in this weird world. But one thing Juanita says to Hero is, again, paraphrasing badly, but she says, most people, intelligent people, realize that 99% of religion is, but that doesn't mean that the other 1% also is. There's something else to it. And you can apply that to magic, to the paranormal, to UFOs. When you go through and you clear it all out, you explain the CO2 and the cold spots and the bad memory and the creaky floor or the bad design. When you explain all of those, 1% of something, of any of these that we're talking about,
like
there's something out there that is unexplained. Will we ever explain it? I don't know. I mean, the more they find out about quantum stuff, and a good friend is a physicist and he shares stuff with me, and the more I read is like, wow, quantum physics is freaking weird. And that's what we're all made up of. And who knows how that's drifting up to the bigger world and affecting things in anything. So 99% maybe, but there's 1% out there that we really need to look at and keep our minds open, is ultimately keep your mind open.
I love that. I honestly love that. I love how you outlined that, all of it. Because I don't know, I feel that some skeptics are very absolute. They don't want to leave that 1%, and they don't want any kind of nuance or try to figure it out. They just refute it, and that's it. Whether it's because of religion or science, it's just they want to wipe it away and just say, oh, it's not real because I deem so.
Right.
But then you're missing the nuance. Then you're missing, but what if there is a whole world out there that you could experience, and you're kind of shying away from it, and there are things you can learn from it, as far as whether it's anything that has to do with the paranormal or supernatural. It's just, we don't, that, like you said, that 1%, you don't know. So we have to at least be open to exploring a little bit and figure it out for ourselves. And if not, then it's kind of a disservice to humanity, ultimately. And exploring and kind of creating new stories in this case. And it's just it's good to have like, don't get me wrong, I don't just believe everything that happens to me, and Jesse's the same way. Even if something that has happened to Jesse and I on a separate occasion or together, we try to talk to each other about it and see, kind of try to digest it and see if there's anything that really did happen, or if there's a plausible explanation that
We
could
laugh
have
about it.
occurred during, and we laugh
Yeah,
about it
laugh
and we
about
make fun
it.
of each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
That's because otherwise you run screaming to the bedroom and put the blanket over your head and go, which I do that every night anyway, but it's usually
Yeah.
not paranormal. It's just the world
I
that
mean,
does that.
I do it too.
Yeah.
I make sure that the blankets are under my feet. I don't want my feet outside of the blankets. Yeah, I don't want something pulling me or anything
Something
like
might bite.
that.
Something
Yeah,
might
exactly.
bite your toes. It might get that. Yeah,
So I have-
that's the thing, and it also gets into the doors of perception. If you go back to Huxley and others like that too, but it's also there's a difference between subjective and objective, and
Exactly.
which ties into. There's so many different directions to have this argument, but the existential nature of this is: are we even here? Are we in a computer program? Are we in the Matrix?
Yeah.
Are we even real? And then when you layer those on, it starts hurting your brain. But each person has their own particular bubble of experience, and if it's real to you, again, no matter where it's coming from, it's real. If the walls are bleeding, they may not be bleeding to me, but if they're bleeding to you, get out the bleach and the bounty, but and mop it up. But it's still, that's real, and you can't discount that. And again, there's so many things that have been found to be actually happening that they say they weren't. Another, if I have this right, I don't have a science degree or anything, but I remember the discovery of prions, which is a form of life. Previously they thought there were only X amount of life, cells and bacteria and viruses, I think 3 or 4, whatever the basic forms of life. And somebody out there suggested, well, there might be something we're missing. And it all tied into Crutchfield's-Jacobs disease and mad cow and all this stuff. And until they got electron microscopes to actually look, and then they went, oh, there's another form of life we didn't know existed. It's the prion. And just when you think that science knows one thing, either it's biology or psychology or, like we said, physics, and then you find something. Oh wait, electrons can tunnel, or they can entrain and move at the same time over light speed distances. Like okay, it just gets weirder and weirder, and that's cool as hell, honestly.
Yeah.
So there's
believe me,
there's room for ghosts in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is. So I have three fun. They're not grueling anymore, I promise. These are fun nerd questions, okay? And it has a lot to do with your own work, and I think it'd be a good spot to kind of outline you as a person and within your work as well professionally. If one of your books became a movie, okay, tomorrow, let's say tomorrow, what director, and there's no restrictions, any director you want behind the camera, you're getting, and why?
You know what? There's so many that I just, not just friends that I think are amazing directors that are coming up, but also the classics. And I'm a big Don Coscarelli fan. He just does such amazing work. But I think I would have to say, probably on the sentiment that gets what I get, would probably be, Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. I love
Edgar Wright is just it gets the sense of humor, but the characters and it's just basically he just managed just to every single time. I mean, whether it's Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead or whatever he's doing, he just kind of knocks it out of the ballpark. It's just really just a big fan of that. But as I said, that's giving short shrift to so many other terrific directors out there that I really admire and like very much. I think Peter Jackson's probably busy. Peter Jackson's busy.
Peter Jackson's busy. Yeah, they're doing they're looking for Gollum right now. They just casted someone to replace Hugo, not Hugo Weaving. He played Aragorn. Viggo Mortensen.
Yes, amazing actor. Like wow.
Yes, I agree. So they just replaced him. So, but I'll take Edgar Wright too. I love Edgar Wright's work, and I think he would marry well with your stories. I think, at least I think so. I'd be there. So
I thought you were going to ask what book he'd want to make a movie into.
Well, that too. Like, which book in particular of yours would you want Edgar Wright to film.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I would want to say the first novel, whatever happened to Uncle Ed, because it's really contained. But I think it'd have to be one of the anthologies, and the sheer reason is they could run for like 6 or 8 seasons with new stories, and then I'd make a whole lot more money from it that way instead of just one movie. I could still be getting checks 5 or 6 seasons from now.
Nice.
So. For sure. Any of all of them. But I do think the novel, but it's also there's a little bit too much material in it to do. I think it would have to be more like a limited series to really get into the deep part of the characters and all that without cutting out major things, or split it into 2. But I always hate when they do that. It's
2-part.
the beauty of series and limited series that you can have, like comic books, is you can tell a much broader palette instead of trying to cram it into 89 minutes or 90 minutes of Hollywood storytelling, because you can't help but leave things out. And the people, the filmmakers, the writers, the directors that manage to, producers, everybody that managed to make those out of the ballpark movies in 90 minutes or 120 minutes, that's magic. It's amazing and incredible when they do that.
Okay. I love that. All right, here's my second question. What sci-fi technology from movies do you wish actually existed?
Oh boy, there's so many. I mean, okay, who doesn't want a lightsaber?
But for real.
but for real, at the end of the day, is there a island of misfit toys for all of the Jedi who have lopped off their arms and fingers and legs when practicing with? I mean, come on, that thing is just instantly sharp. It goes through anything. How do you even practice with that without cutting something of your body off? So thankfully for prostheses, that's probably what that also happened to Darth Vader. That's part of the mess that he had with his helmet and all that. You know what? I would probably have to say either light speed or wormholes, to be honest, because it would enable us to explore much quicker, explore the world better, and of course find out, put ourselves on the map so all the hungry aliens could come and find us. But honestly, I think we could find other civilizations that could help us expand humanity, expand our boundaries, but also the same way help them expand theirs too as well. So I do believe in more of the kind of the Star Trekian mythos that yes, there's bad things out there, but there's amazing wonder, and it's to explore. And I think that's the core of humanity. I mean, people jumped in boats, Kon-Tiki, they jumped in small boats and went across the Pacific. And the pilgrims and whoever else were just jumping into little tiny boats and going to find out, oh, I hear there's a new continent out there. Let's go across the North Sea. The Vikings did it. Leif Erikson did it. I mean, those people were crazy, but that's that humanity. And I think as long as we have a frontier to go to, and wormholes would definitely help us explore quicker, because you can't, the speed of light's not just a good idea, it's the law, and it would frankly take us forever to get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. And I think you would, with wormholes and, just anything of that sort, I think they would be able to somehow reverse engineer it if we had access to this kind of science, and somehow create teleportation, because I'm tired of driving very, very far away.
Yes.
So where I grew up, where both Jesse and I grew up, it's like a 6 to 7 hour drive for me sometimes to get there. I want to visit home, but teleportation would be nice.
Take a plane. I've told you many times, take a plane.
Even that,
45 minutes.
Even that is so much.
Where the heck are you that far out? That's amazing. That's further, but I know that that would be kind of fun too, the teleportation or the being able to just step through a door. And that's kind of a wormhole when you get right down to it. Peter Hamilton does that great in the Dreaming Void trilogy and the 2 books after and the many after, that one of the things that helps humanity go out is the invention by Ozzy of the wormhole. And they use it for personal things, but also on the big scale for spaceships and all that, kind of like a Stargate or something. So
yeah, like Stargate.
So yeah, everybody can just have a door in their house, but you also have to be careful is how do you lock that door and how do you stop things from coming through?
Exactly. Like how do you manage that? Like how do you go to someone else's exactly.
And who is, when you watch the transporter with the person on that in Star Trek, like there's what, 4 levers there? Like what level could this be a little bit? You're just kind of you're just winging it. Is he just feeling it? Like
pull the red
"Ooh,
one.
okay." Like
Pull
yeah,
the
go
red
push
one.
it's kind of like adjusting the equalizer on your stereo. I want a little less bass in here. Like, can I come out the other side? I'm 180 pounds now. Or where's my left arm? Like, wait,
Oh,
whoa, hang on a
imagine!
second.
Oh my gosh.
That'd be crazy.
So this one's more tied. This next question is more tied to your work, and I think it's a perfect one to kind of end the episode because just so that everybody kind of gauges where you're at and where you were inspired from, and from other authors or writers. If you could collaborate with anyone, whether it's I don't know if you have aspirations to create a screenplay or anything like that, or just stay within, uh, you know, writing books with any writer, any writer, living or dead. Who would it be?
Ooh, living or dead. I don't know if he and I would get along, but it's part of me. I just want to go back and, I have to say 2. I will have to say 2. They're both
Okay.
long departed now, but I want to go back and meet Robert E. Howard. The whole story about a guy, I mean, you probably know his life story and all that, and too much to elaborate into here, but basically a guy who lived in Cross Plains, Texas, middle of nowhere, like
Yep.
you were saying, with hardly any
Mhm.
influences and no library. And yes, he wrote letters back and forth with H.P. Lovecraft and all that, but he had very little influence. And suddenly, this oil field roughneck from the roughest part of the non-literary part of the world suddenly wanted to be a writer, and in a very brief period with hardly any instruction whatsoever wrote some of the most amazing stories ever. That but Conan is just the best known, but he did
Yep.
supernatural, he did boxing stories, he did westerns, he did horror,
Mhm.
he just did King Cole, and just the imagination of somebody like that. And it's just like, and he's the ultimate blue collar person, and the writing comes across, it's wild and fantastic but very focused. But the other one, he's a fellow Indiana person. I never got to meet him, but he was a huge influence on my writing. And they say he's science fiction, but that's really from the Sirens of Titan. But I've just always, my whole life, I just someday hope in the cosmic diner somewhere I can just sit down and have a cup of coffee with Kurt Vonnegut. I just think,
Nice.
we could just have a conversation because so many of his books are my favorites for different reasons, and just that wild imagination, but also what he did for writing, what he did for people, and his teaching. And I have to say, if you ever get to Indianapolis, of all the great things to do there, oh, okay, there's only one thing to do there. Go to the Kurt Vonnegut Museum. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot of great things in Indianapolis. There really is.
That's more
but,
than you could do in Calexico. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. But no, the Kurt Vonnegut Museum is amazing, and it's not just about him. It's cool to get to see his desk and his typewriter and all the letters and everything in his life. That definitely his World War II experiences, being a prisoner of war during the firebombing of Dresden, which influenced books and things, but also the letters to his parents. But the big thing that he's done, and the museum has done, is that he's founded. Here's the whole section which is about banned books. And here's the giant collection of books which have been banned. And I haven't been back since the craziness started a few years ago, so I'm sure the section is even bigger. But he was a champion of free speech and of imagination and of people expressing themselves. And he used his platform in the best possible way to inspire other people through the writing, and just write some great damn books that are funny and weird as hell. And, just one of those literary icons that I think, here's to you, Kurt. I just would love to have a cup of coffee someday.
Love those 2 answers very much. Um, I as we've mentioned throughout the show, um, you just released Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed last year in January, correct? Am I right on that?
Yes, yeah, it's been out a little over a year now, which is, wow, shocking.
So what do you have in future works?
making, yeah.
Are you already
Do you
kind of
take a
brainstorming a little
break
bit, or do you
yeah.
take a
Well,
break?
I'm
Yeah.
I'm way overdue on my second novel. I'm adding to the end of it and editing it now. I took some life breaks on it, which again, it's way overdue. It should have been done. Arguably, should have been out and done before Uncle Ed, but the timing
Okay.
came out differently. So I've got to finish that, and that's. I think you'd enjoy it. It's a lot of what we're talking about. It's called Home. It's the current title until somebody makes me change
Ooh.
it. But it's about a paranormal investigator who's looking for the
Ooh.
truth, and he's not
Okay.
finding the truth, and his people are pressuring him to find something. And the
Mm-hmm.
question becomes, why don't you go back to the one place that you know is haunted? Go back to the house where the things happened when you were a child. And he's got to basically face up to 30 years worth of therapy, and with his uncle, who is his cinematographer, go back to the house that allegedly, theoretically ate his dad and drove his mother insane, and find out, was it truly haunted? Was I just a kid imagining things, or what really happened in this house? And bring the cameras, bring the team, bring everyone to this, what he sees as a very dangerous place, to find out the truth about the paranormal. So I'm very much exploring in this book a lot of the things we
Wow.
were talking about tonight.
Yeah.
And no spoiler alerts, but it's been a challenge to do it, but it's also just like Uncle Ed. It's about family. It's
Mm-hmm.
about family, chosen family, but also real family, and finding out, the past of what happened to you when you were a kid, and uncovering the real truth of that. So pretty exciting. I just need to get off my lazy butt and find the time to finish it. It's very, very, very close now. So, and I think people are
Oh, I
going to
can't
really,
wait.
really like it, especially people into the paranormal. So,
Yeah.
and
A lot of our
and,
audience,
and I, I,
you've
I will
already,
say,
yeah.
yeah, I will say I'm lovingly making fun of some ghost hunting, but and some of the tropes and things, but at the same time, it's out of respect. At the same
Right,
time, a
right.
skeptical
No, hey,
respect. So
make fun of it, Eric, and I'll tell
make
you
fun of it.
why. A lot of people within the community too, we make fun of a lot of the more well-known, I'm going to say characters, because what they portray on a lot of their shows are characters. For instance, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ghost Adventures, which is Zach
No,
Bagans.
yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably the most famous and prominent figures within the paranormal community. But here on the show, we do it a lot, and off the show, we make fun of him because he's kind of overzealous,
Mhm.
and he kind of, I don't want to say he over exaggerates, but I'm going to say he over exaggerates on a lot of
Just
his
a little
stuff.
bit. Well,
Yeah.
you can't fault the enthusiasm, and
Yeah,
definitely
for sure.
you got to respect the enthusiasm. But I'm like you, and hey, I don't know him. I haven't really watched the show, but it's like, the team is in the basement of the old abandoned industrial plant, and you hear water dripping. Did you hear that? Well, yeah, it's water. It's water dripping.
Yes.
Or like the floor creaks in the 200-year-old house. What was that? Well, it was the house settling. Like duh. Like
We
no,
have a
yeah,
running
no
joke on
kidding.
the
So
show. South Park made fun of taps. It was it was called Ghost Hunters, or I forgot what it's called. And they're on South Park. They're investigating a house, and the guy just said, "Did you hear that? It was like a oh, there's something warm going down my leg." He's peeing on himself, and
that
yeah,
might be the only thing that South Park did that the Simpsons didn't. But Simpsons did it. But
exactly,
having said that, the
exactly.
Simpsons probably has done ghost hunting. So, and I'm just
More
forgetting
than
it. But
likely, more
more
likely.
than likely.
Well, I can't wait for this book, Home. I can't wait for Home to come out. I will definitely pick it up, and I will also pick up your recent release, which is, of course, Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed. A lot of people go ahead and pick up the book, or is digital. Do you like people to read you want them to read digital or physical?
It's, you know what? I like real books myself, but I've gotten older and I have to
Okay.
wear these things. And so I read more on my Nook ever. But also the audiobook is almost done. My good friend Graydon
Oh,
is
okay.
feverishly working on the audiobook. It's delayed because he had a lot of other things on his plate to finish up first. But he
Of course.
also narrated with other female voices all 4 of my anthologies before this. So I just wanted to
Okay.
keep my first novel deal with the guy that's been with me since my first book. So I'm really excited, and I don't have an exact release, but maybe by the time this comes out, or spring of 26 here, any time now, the audiobook will be out. And because I'm a fan of audiobooks, awesome. I like reading, I like listening. A lot of times I'll listen and then read, or vice versa, and it's a kind of a different experience of the same story.
It is.
So that's
do you
coming
ever
up.
do book tours or book signing events or anything like that in your?
I have done a few. But when Dark Delicacies still had their physical store, I've done signings at every one of them, and I go to conventions here and there and do them. I haven't done anything in a while. It's kind of hard to set them up and do the travel and all that. But I'm definitely open to that, and because I love bookstores, and I love people that run bookstores. I used to work in them, and just something about used, new, whatever. It's great. So, but it's kind of hard to organize those because most of the stores really want the big name writers, and even though I'm giant in my own mind, the publishing world is who is that? But you know what? even if one person shows up, that's fine with me, because it's one person that may introduce them, and I'll spend all my time reading from somebody else's book instead of my own. But it's just like sharing the geekdom, sharing the joy of reading and writing and all that with other people. So, and hopefully they buy 50 copies for all their Christmas birthday gifts.
That's a good idea. Get everybody a book.
Yeah, get everybody.
Exactly. Well, I mean, outside of obviously you're working on Home right now, are there any other things you want to plug, or any other ventures you have going on that you want to?
That's mostly it. Just plugging this book, and you know what? The anthologies are still out there. I love the eternal shelf life of electronic books and everything. So the Hell Comes to Hollywood 1 and 2, as you mentioned, and 18 Wheels of Horror and 18 Wheels of Science Fiction, which are both my, should be obvious, but trucking anthologies with 18 different writers and wild stories in each one, and those are just a hoot. And so I love promoting those. They're still out there and still great storytelling that's kind of eternal. And in science fiction, kind of prescient about some of the stuff that's happening with self-driving vehicles and AI and things like that. We were really ahead of the curve on a lot of that stuff. So those are great.
It's more,
and I'm still working
ever more so now. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, ever more so now. And I'm working on a few screenplays, which you can't really plug. So, but I still love the screenplay format, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to get back out there and get my next movie in the can, so I can move to Beverly Hills and live next to the Clampetts. It'll be perfect.
There you go. Well, we would love to have you back on the show after maybe some of your movies come out, or when Home releases. We would love to have you back.
That'd be great. I would love to.
You release Home, we read it, and then you come back on, and we have a giant discussion about Home. How about that?
Yeah. Only if you say this sucks. What were you thinking?
I would actually love to have some autographed books for some of our listeners. That would be great.
Yeah, we would love to do that.
I would be perfect. I would love to do that. So let me know. We'll do the whole contact thing, and let me know who would want that. And any giveaways for you or anyone. Yes, I'm very happy to do that. So.
We appreciate it. Well, dudes, we loved having Eric on the show. We had some great conversations. Make sure you're following us on YouTube and all of the other platforms you guys are listening on. We are watching everything. We watch everything. We appreciate you. All of our mainstays, Kylie, Miriam, Casey, Cindy, everybody out there. Thank you so much for watching, and all of our Patreon members. We love you guys so much. We love that Eric had time to carve out and jump on the show. We will have him on again in the future when all of his work comes out. And it was a great conversation. We want to thank you so much for jumping on, Eric, and joining our show. It was a pleasure by far.
I appreciate being here very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of nerd talk, just the way I like it.
Nerd over. And keep looking over your shoulder. Keep looking over your shoulder. You never know who might be there.
All right, dudes. That's all we have for you. We will catch you guys on the next one. See you later, dudes.